Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the very first episode of Happy Hour with Sad Comedians, a podcast where we talk about comedy and mental health and everything in between. Really it's just an excuse for me to get out of the house and have a drink on a patio, but anyways, this week I'm meeting up with fellow comedian Nick Peron, so let's go. All right, we are live. Very first episode of Happy Hour with Sad Comedians. Cheers, bud.
Aye.
We're not supposed to touch the...
I don't care.
Yeah, it's my very first guest, Monsieur Nick Peron.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, everyone. Sitting here at Finnigan's Pub, Vanier.
Yes, Finnigan's Pub in the heart of Vanier on Montreal Road, one of the finest establishments in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
One of the only ones, actually. But most other bars. I mean, there's a couple down the way, but this place has been a staple in my life for over a decade now. I like coming here. Vanier has a bit of a negative connotation, which are completely just overblown and unreal. And this is a nice blue-collar neighborhood, and it keeps me kind of grounded. Now, whenever I spend too much time in front of my fucking ivory tower or the keyboard, so to speak, I come here and it kind of grounds me in reality, where you hang around with people who are a lot more real than most of the people you encounter in comedy. But
we'll get into that.
I'll digress.
We'll get into that. But actually, we're talking about Finnigan's. So you used to host an open mic here, and then more recently as well on Sunday nights.
So my early days of comedy, I did what a lot of open mic comics would be. I wasn't getting that much stage time because I was new.
Yep,
which,
same.
Unknown commodity, and quite frankly, I fucking stank back then. I
still do.
Well, thanks.
No, I still do. I'm saying.
Oh,
That's
you?
fine.
Yeah. Well, I don't. I'm usually like two sheets to the wind by the time you're on stage, but. but no, it's so when I was a younger comic, so I decided here's a place in my neighborhood, and I pitched the idea to the to like one of the co-owners at the time, and he liked the idea. And the show ran for about 2 years, and and at the time, believe it or not, there was just absolute comedy, yucks. I think there was maybe 2 or 3 other open mics, so there wasn't a glut of open mics around the city, and the scene back then too was relatively small. Like there was probably a dozen of us all told.
Dozen? Really? That's it?
That's it. That's probably about it.
Like, and you get 100 spots for every call every day of the week nowadays. Like,
It was smaller fish back then, and these days, you trying to call in or send in emails is usually a fucking nightmare trying to get through. But in those days, and there was a lot of interest, at least from comics, to do the show. An audience, on the other hand, was a little more difficult to pull off, unfortunately. So after 2 years, we decided now we're gonna pull the plug on. Well, the owners decided they were gonna pull the plug on it, and we got replaced by Dart Night. There was a brief moment where I'm like, "Hey, we can combine the
crossover."
two.
I can see that,
then I realized darts and comedians on stage, bad combination
for hecklers with darts.
You don't want to arm the hecklers, which there was surprisingly very few back in those days.
Might keep you on your toes, though. You never know.
Well, yeah, true. At least with my glasses, I had a shield protecting me from any potential danger. The show went on. It died out pretty quickly, and like I said, back then too, there was only like a dozen of us kicking around. I mean, it was starting to pick up, where you had people coming in and out of the scene. But it wasn't to the level it is now, which I find just completely astounding that there are just so many people on the scene now, especially with like so much limited stage time. And then the other challenge that comes up is creating an open mic somewhere at a club that doesn't conventionally do comedy, and having it be sustainable and last. And you know, there's only been like 2 open mics since my foray that have really lasted. And you know, admittedly, back in the day, I kind of mocked the people who came up with. There was a whole thing. This is before your time, but there was this whole thing where there was just a lot of open mics popping up, and
was the whole Flapjacks fiasco?
Yeah. So for those
the Flapjack 7, or
for those of you who are deeply interested in the Ottawa comedy scene, who are uninformed, how many years ago was this? You know, I don't know. I drink too much, and it was a point where there was just a lot of open mics that were popping up, and Jason Lawrence, the owner of Absolute Comedy, kind of took umbrage with that because he was like, "You're diluting the quality of shows at paid clubs, because why is somebody going to pay money to go to a professional comedy club when they can see the same, half dozen nitwits doing open mic comedy for free at your local pancake house?"
Which was just down the street from Preston.
I think really
that was probably the.
I think at the end of the day, I think it was more that Jason was cheesed that it was they chose a business that was right down the street. So it's like, why are you going to shit where you eat, so to speak?
Right.
And you know, like. You can argue for and against what he said, and I mean, on the opposite end of the coin, Howard Wagman over at Yuck Yucks was actually encouraging it. So, and
wow.
And you know, like, I mean, if you were comparing the 2 club owners, it's like comparing apples to oranges. I mean, they both have their own sort of like insights onto it, like how to run a business, and I'm not going to dive into that because I would still like both of them to very much book me. But who knows? Maybe after this podcast, that's probably going to be right off the fucking table. We'll see. But
we're both blacklisted, anyways. I think. I was a doorman at Absolute before this all happened, so I was hopefully getting some stage time, and I was like,
that's something. I did. I did that for a couple of years, and with my anxiety and stress, I couldn't handle it after a while. But what was I getting at? I was talking about how. I was talking about like, there's actually 2 successful clubs, and I made fun of them back in the day. So this is me officially retracting some of the criticisms I made however many fucking years ago. But Swizzles has been a show that has stood the test of time. And
I think actually Swizzles was birthed out of the Flapjack incident, and a lot of them, like the Wellington Eatery as well.
Wellington Eatery would be the second one. Now, there's been a lot that have come and gone, like Pub 101, you mentioned that earlier. Jerry used to have, like, Pub 101 had a lot of attrition where, like, somebody would take it over. Yeah,
I think Aaron Hill maybe at some point.
Aaron Hill, Dan Siggy, he doesn't do comedy anymore, but he used to do it, like, back in the day.
Yeah.
And I forget the name of the guy who does it now. I don't know if they still do it, but
they do. So Rami and Joel Jacob host, on the 3rd floor. So it's actually a bit better.
Yeah, that was something I suggested that they did.
Yeah, it was less noise
and less noise because the main floor they're always.
Yeah, it's actually a good night. Yeah, once a month on Tuesdays usually. So
yeah, before this.
Well, before this. Yeah,
before this all happened.
pre
COVID-19. Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
how the world has changed. And you know, like. It's I guess we can talk about that if we want to.
How have you been through all this? We can talk about it. It's still relevant.
Thriving. Although some of the viewers may notice that I am a little heftier than I probably was the last time they saw me. And
less hair though.
Less. Oh yeah, because. When you edit this, maybe you can dig up the Facebook photo. I actually have a photo before I hadn't had my hair cut since last summer, and then of course COVID-19, because I couldn't care less, right?
Yeah.
And and by the time this was like weeks before phase 1 was even like an idea. It was the first week where the temperature was up over 30 degrees. I'm like, fuck this, and I shaved my head. But I was like, it looked like I looked like what would have happened if Kurt Cobain didn't blow his fucking brains out, and they just like left him in a basement to eat fatty foods and play video games for like 30 years. That I looked like that. I've had a lot of weight gain, and some of that has been the inactivity from COVID-19. But other things, like I've quit smoking.
Nice, good for you. How long has that been?
A couple months now.
Wow.
But the other thing too is the anti-anxiety medication that I take, which has been a huge help for the anxiety and depression that I've been struggling with, especially the last couple years. It's been working great for my mental health, not so much for my figure. Right. So it's not even just the weight. Like, I'm starting to get like acne on my arms and shit like that. It's fucking weird. I feel like I'm turning into like this weird middle-aged teenager, and I'm less concerned about what girls will think of me now. Mostly because I've actually been laid, so I know it's not that big of a fucking deal anymore. And I've been faced with some challenges, so I've started to like try to get out and walk and exercise, and to the point where like my feet, I get home from like walking for like I'll go and I'll walk for 5 fucking hours.
Really? Wow.
Which is fucking murder at some point, because a lot of my weight is like right in the front of me. So if you were to do a side profile, you'd be like, oh, is she 9 months pregnant? Is it a boy or a girl?
Carrying low.
Which, thank you for shattering gender barriers, audience. Thank you. But also... Also, at the same time, like you're carrying a lot of the weight in the front. So I've been experiencing like lower back pain. So what I've been doing, I've been like popping Robaxacet like I'm a pill addict, and like going out for these 5-hour walks, and I'll come home, and it's like my feet inside my shoes will be bloody from all the blisters, or because it was COVID-19. I'm walking around without shoes and socks for like weeks on end because I'm in my house, and so I'm not clipping my toenails as often as possible. But when you go out, fun fact here's a COVID-19 fact that you will not get on the news: trim your nails, trim your fucking toenails, because it turns into a nightmare when you exercise. My feet are just horrible.
I think I only started trimming my nails when I started wearing flip-flops now. I'm like, oh shit, haven't done this in... You
wear flip-flops, you fucking monster.
I do. And I still use my douche whistle like...
So yeah, what were we... Because we were talking about the state of comedy, or at least the Room movies. So yeah, The Room was revived by Jerry Hodges. Jerry Hodges came in one day and flashed his business card. I find it kind of cute that he has business cards.
Shout out to Jerry Hodges. He gave me my very first spot at Pub 101 in 2018. So
Jerry
man.
does get a lot of flack in the Ottawa comedy community, and a lot of that has been downloaded from when he was in Halifax. And because comics are notorious gossips,
right?
And sitting down and getting to know him,
Look at us gossiping.
Yeah, I know. I've come to realize that he's not really that bad a guy, and sometimes I'm trying to be polite, but sometimes he's not very good on social cues. But I don't think that's something you should ostracize him for.
No.
He's also actually kind of a good example of what I feel is a bit of a hypocrisy in this community. Oh, here we go. We're going to get serious.
I'm going to get canceled.
Oh, God. Here we go.
Episode.
I find it interesting that, and there's a reason, you probably noticed that there's been an absence of me commenting on, like, on like what's going on in the comedy scene in Ottawa, like the Ottawa comedy Facebook page. Like I've stopped commenting on it altogether. A couple reasons, and part of it is just like it's just so tiresome when, you know, like some famous comedian does something inappropriate, and then it becomes this commentary, and then you have the same obtuse people who are saying the same things about, oh, fucking cancel culture. There's no such thing as cancel culture, by the way. Oh, cancel culture is real and blah, blah, blah. And then you have the same people arguing it. It's just a lot of back and forth, a lot of
flame wars, and that's what happens.
And then when it comes to actual incidents that happen in our community, I find that people are a lot of talk, and it's a lot of bluster. And they'll only tend to attack somebody if they know that person doesn't have anybody to defend them. So while the community is actively saying, "Oh, we need more people of color and more diversity in the comedy scene," yet at the same time, a lot of people will go out of their way to roast and tear down Jerry Hodges. And I'm like, well, you know, if I was a person of color and I was watching this, and I was watching you tear down one of the few black guys in the scene, I wouldn't feel like it's very inclusive.
Very welcoming. And
exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
And then, you know, like there's other people, like there's this one woman who is Native who on the level champions diversity in the comedy scene. Yet when there was a show that was being booked, people of different ethnic origins and whatever, and they booked another Native or Indigenous woman to do the show, she was shit-talking that girl the whole fucking time. And it's like, well, you're only an ally when it's fucking convenient for you. And it's the same thing when it comes to mental health. You know, people will talk about how we should be supporting people in the community with mental health, and yet, you know, somebody like Jamie Villeneuve will make a misstep, say something, do something that, you know, okay, yes, inappropriate, but they'll just completely demonize and attack the guy and blacklist him from the community. When I'm just gonna wait till this goes by. Johnny Sweeping, one of the sponsors of this podcast. Johnny Sweeper.
Johnny Sweeping 2020 is the coupon code for.
So the thing with Jamie Villeneuve is, you know, like Jamie Villeneuve has his own struggles, and maybe he's not like the most socially adept guy. Like, I love Jamie, by the way. I'm not saying this to if you're watching this, I'm not saying this to insult you. But
love the room at Daniel O'Connell. Shout out to Jamie for that one too.
Short-lived, but
it was beloved. Fun. Yeah.
The patrons got really sick of us after a while.
The same 4 people.
Yeah, and you know, but at the same time, it's like, you know, this is somebody instead of demonizing him, which makes him just double down and like try to be a friend to him and include him in the scene. But no, everyone. And then that was the other thing that just completely drives me fucking nuts about this scene is that a number of people tend to get, because roast comedy became popular, so all these comics just decide, you know what, I'm gonna turn. Not every moment is a roastable moment, but there's a couple of shitheads on the scene. I'm not gonna name any people, but you know, if your dander is going up while I'm saying this, you're probably one of these fucking assholes. You know, like they have to turn into a roastable moment because they're so fucking insecure that they can't. Like, they have to tear down somebody else. And then, you know, like, what's another example? So the community will say, well, we also need to make comedy a safe space for people, because a perfect example was when Adam Richman was going to come and perform at Yuck Yucks in Ottawa, and a lot of female comics took offense to it because of the allegations of rape and what have you.
I don't know what with that.
I think that was probably before your time too.
Nah,
but it became a big deal. But I'm like, you know, before you start policing these people that are coming in from out of town, we still have somebody in the community that actively makes comedy an unsafe space. There was a male comic and there was a female comic. So both sides of the spectrum that were, and I took a particular umbrage with the female comic in particular, because she's had a notorious history of literally stalking other male comics, club owner, to the point where, and then everyone still keeps on giving her second chances and this and that, but rumors will circulate about one particular comic, and they'll just tear that person down because they have nobody to defend them. So I find it interesting that the scene's sense of social awareness and social justice, to use a hacky term. I don't like the term social justice warrior. I also think that the concept where right-leaning people call social. I think that's bullshit.
It's a connotation now.
I think the negative.
I mean, social justice is something that we should all.
I just find that it's entirely. They only do it when it's within their own backyard, when it's convenient, and when they know that they're not going to get any sort of blowback from it. And I find that entirely cowardly. Like you're not a champion of a cause until you act on every instance of it, not just the ones that are fucking convenient. And and I've called multiple people in the community fucking cowards. Not to their faces per se, but over Facebook and whatever. But I mean, that's my stance. I'm not going to engage with any of you people, because really, at the end of the day, there's also actually another more recent incident where a male comic in the community has been accused of committing rape, and it's like, well, instead of making it a big issue, people are just whispering about it. I'm not here to name names, but I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy of it. I mean, you're supposed to be champions of making this community a safe space, yet you're all dicking around when it's somebody in your own backyard. I mean, it's fine enough to criticize Krista Ella and all sorts of other comics that are famous for their improprieties, which I'm not saying you shouldn't. Fine, yes,
but you should do both if you're gonna do one.
I mean, if you're gonna be loud and boisterous about some Hollywood celebrity that you're never gonna meet or ever perform with, but you're gonna be chicken shit to do it in your own community, then fuck off. You're not really a champion of those subjects, and you should go fucking shut the fuck up.
Yeah, at that point, I guess if it's just virtue signaling, if you're just on Twitter, you just want to make your hop on the bandwagon a bit on jumping on Hollywood stars and all that.
And the other thing that really bothered me about the community, and this is something I've never really publicly talked about, was in any situation where I publicly called out somebody on that group, something has always happened where all of a sudden the person I'm arguing with, something happens. And that happened most recently last summer during the comedy competition, Absolute Comedy. All of a sudden somebody was sending out rumors and whatever, and about somebody I was actively having an argument with. And then shortly after that, I started getting text messages from this guy. I'm assuming it's a guy. Sorry, not sorry, I guess. I don't know. Like, somebody was... This person started sending me harassing text messages. So, I've come to the conclusion that there's somebody who, in the community, whenever I've spoken up about somebody, I don't know if this has happened to anybody else. And if it's happened to anybody else, certainly speak up or contact me, tell me something. But I honestly think that there is some shithead in the community that actively goes out of their way to fucking gaslight people. Like, I had this... So this happened during the competition last year, which was also a really difficult period for me as well, because I was also at a really weird place with my mental health. I was in between medications and stuff like that, and so all of a sudden I had somebody emailing the club saying this person's gonna do something, and then I
heard about this.
They were coming, so the organizers were asking me if I was doing it because I had an argument with the guy a couple weeks before. I'm like,
so you think somebody knew that you were having an argument with this guy, so they're sort of trying to frame you to...
And this has happened whenever I've had an argument with another particular person, where all of a sudden
devious.
Within a couple of days, all of of a sudden this person's accusing me of doing something.
Wow.
And I'm like, what the fuck? No, my argument's with you. Like, this was shit like being done to their family and stuff like that. And I'm like, no. Like, I'm up front. Like, if I have an issue with you, I'm going to fucking tell you. And so, and they're like, this last time, like, this person was actively texting me. And of course, like, I called the cops, and the cops are like, well, they're not actually threatening your life or doing anything. So there's not really anything we can do, blah, 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 blah. But I have this person, and then of course, like, I tried to call the person, call them up and be like, what the fuck? And it's like one of those, burner cell phone numbers that you can get online.
Jesus,
now.
That's elaborate.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's like, so don't know who it is. They're tech savvy enough to sorry. COVID-19.
No shit.
No, I'm kidding.
Nice.
Yeah, strike that from the video, but no, and it was something, and I was also, like, between medications, I was also not at my, like, I was at a very, very difficult point in my life right now. And so for somebody that exists in the community that is actively doing that behind the scenes, like I said, I don't know who it is.
Wow.
I mean,
we're going to get at the bottom of this. This is the show.
But there is somebody that is actively, like, when there is one of these sort of, like, situations.
Oh.
And I think what really emboldens that person is the fact that, at least in the instances where I'm going back and forth with that person, nobody's really stepping in and taking what I would say is the right side of the argument. So, for example, one of them is the person who stocked all those male comics. People just, no, like, we're just going to dismiss it because you're always targeting that person. Like, well, there's a fucking reason. One of my last arguments about that, because before they used to just delete it, and because the admins in the community of the Ottawa comedy community page were fucking spineless cowards. And I have no compunction.
I'm definitely posting this on the Ottawa community page.
Go for it. Honestly, a lot of them were fucking cowards until one of the victims of the person I'm talking about became an admin and told them, well, no, he's right. And then they had a concession where they were just going to close it from commenting. And I'm like, what the fuck? So the only reason why you're now conceding that this is an issue that should be at least seen is now you have an admin that actually personally experienced that. But you're also closing off commenting, so you're not even discussing it in any greater terms, which I think is very fucking cowardly. So, again, those are my umbrages with the community as a whole when it comes to them actually fighting for a cause or being a champion of something. In some ways, yeah, they are. But is it good enough? No. Not by any means. And you know what? Like, I call them cowards now, but, you know, if they actually started doing something about it, then my opinion would change, obviously. And, you know, like, the other thing, and I guess this is where I'm getting kind of personal about it, is when it comes to, you know, again, we're champions of people's mental health, and we're trying to be supportive. You know, at my worst, where I might not have been publicly posting it on the Ottawa comedy community page, but I'm friends with enough of these people, and I'm publicly posting about my own mental health struggles.
Right.
And I might as well be talking to a wall, which, I mean, again, I'm trying to communicate on social media. It shouldn't be much of a fucking surprise, but at the same time, there's no illusions. People are seeing it, but they're just choosing, well, you know what? He's not worth my time. Well, I mean, there was a particular rough period where at one point I had my car was repossessed because at the time, because of everything I was going through, drugs, therapy, I would, other aspects of my life were falling on the back seat. So especially paying bills. So at one point my car was repossessed, and when it comes to the brand of anxiety I suffer from, being in like confined spaces with individuals, i.e. riding the bus, it's just a no-go. Like I'm having I haven't been on a bus in over a decade because I have fucking panic attacks.
Right.
So when I was like openly asking people, and I did a GoFundMe page, and I was posting it, and I was asking people, well, if you can't contribute, can you at least share? Maybe because I was only behind by about $4,000, and not even a blip from anyone in the community. Nobody shared it. Nobody even fucking commented on it. Right. And I'm just like, well, if you're trying to help out people that are struggling with their mental health, at least if you couldn't afford helping like financially, like at least spread the word and say, this is somebody in the community, which just goes to show, like, unless you're somebody important to them, they don't fucking care.
Right.
And bitter contention. I've seen, GoFundMes from other people who have, more checkered histories. All of a sudden, just, it's been paid. And it's like, what the fuck? So, maybe there's some sour grapes on my part, but at the same time, there's a lot of shit that's happened with, in terms of like my dealings with the community as it stands right now. Because it didn't used to be like that. It used to be, like I said, a couple dozen people, and we were a pretty close-knit community. People cared about each other and looked out for each other. And see now, maybe part of it is that there's too many people.
Maybe, yeah. We're not as close-knit, or maybe there's some
advocate, but at the same time, like I said, I've got some grievances
now,
and these are my opinions, and a lot of people are probably going to disagree with everything I've just said. And
wait, is this your goodbye speech? Is this your?
Well, I am planning on moving away, so at the end of the day,
lay it all out.
At the end of the day, like, even if I was staying, you know what? I don't really give a shit whether or not people disagree with me. These are my opinions. This is something I've actually learned over the last.
These are not the opinions of the podcast. These are Mr. Nick Peron's own.
These are my own.
Yeah.
But one thing I've learned over the last couple of months, especially once we've all been confined indoors, is I've discovered that you don't necessarily have to answer or respond to every sort of comment you get on the internet. I found myself in these endless, like, where you're posting retorts and retractions and just trying to, like, because ultimately in the internet, in the history of the internet, I don't think anyone's won an argument in a comment thread ever.
Yeah.
So I've just learned to fucking stop doing it. So there's been a certain point where, like, I'm posting this comment, this is all I'm saying about it. The person can write as much more about it as they want. I'm done with it now.
Right.
I've said my piece. I shouldn't have to elaborate further, really.
Really, there should be like a jury of 12 of your peers that would go through the thread and then say, okay, well, who's the winner?
Not even. There's a certain,
because nobody's gonna admit they're wrong on the internet.
I don't think, like, difference of opinion. There's no real winners.
Well, yeah,
except for maybe Facebook for all the advertising algorithms that cash in on us constantly checking back to see what shithead said in response. But like, this might generate a lot of retorts from people in the community, which is fine. I'm not going to answer any of your retorts. I don't give a shit. So there you go. If you want to waste your time writing a lengthy counter argument or recording a podcast, go ahead. That's within your rights. I don't care. I'm personally not going to respond to it, because I've already written off the community. Basically what I'm saying is I've written off the community as fucking irrelevant to me.
I think this is a great place for me to say, hey, please like and share and subscribe.
So yeah, it's become an irrelevance to me because, quite frankly, it's caused me a lot more grief and a lot more stress and a lot more anguish than it was really worth. So I guess the message I am trying to put out there is, being part of a comedy scene, you don't necessarily have to be part of the group. Have some friends within the community, but the community is probably going to trample on you before for stage time before they actually pull out a red carpet and give you an opportunity to do something. It's all self-interest, so pick your friends wisely. And I would say that if you hang out with somebody in the community, I would not trust them unless you think that you could commit a crime with them and they wouldn't squeal on you.
They wouldn't tell on stage. They wouldn't turn to the...
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just I have a lot of negative experiences that have really soured, and it's something that the Toronto comedy scene notwithstanding, I don't see in other communities where, especially much larger communities where, like, you look at Montreal, you look at Vancouver, you look at the comedy scenes anywhere else in this country, and you don't see this kind of, like, I don't know. Let's change the subject.
Well, this is a great segue, actually, because really what I want to talk about was comedy and mental health, and you touched a bit on it. But so I guess for me, well, one of the questions I have, I guess, why is there so much mental health issues with comedians? Is there a correlation? Is it a causation? Because I know for me, comedy has not been therapeutic. It's actually increased my anxiety and depression, and made me worse off in a way.
Depending on how you go at it, it can be a detriment. Some people, they think it's a therapy or deluded themselves. Some people, it might legitimately be a therapy.
Yeah,
why does comedy attract, for lack of a better term, broken people? I think it's because broken people are usually funny, to varying degrees. But I mean, for me, myself, like, I've always been kind of an outsider,
right?
And not, like, even going back to when I was a kid, I wasn't into the same things everyone else was in. I was always an outside. I was the nerd. I was the guy who was, like, bullied and picked on. And the only way I could usually get the attention of anybody that a normal person wouldn't have to struggle to get was by making jokes, was by being humorous, by doing something absurd. And that's how I thrived socially, and that kind of translated into me doing comedy later on, which happened entirely by accident. But I've always been a humorous guy. And
how did you get started, though? Do we have time?
Short version of the story, a friend of my old roommate was actively doing stand-up comedy. She was one of the 12 people in that close-knit community.
Okay, cool.
And it was suggested, oh yeah, you're a funny guy, you should try stand-up comedy. So and I gave it a shot, and of course, like many other people, it's like a disease. You get it in your blood and it starts spreading like a cancer.
Well, that's what I found too. It's like an addiction, right? It's like this addiction. You get you're anxious about it, you're always thinking about it.
There is an addiction component. I mean, the interesting thing with me particularly, because off stage, especially nowadays, I'm very reclusive. I don't tend to like large crowds. I don't like interact. I'm almost like I'm like a borderline an agoraphobe these days. And there's very few places that I go where I feel that it's like a safe place for me. So this is one of them.
No, yeah, this is pretty distanced right now. So
this place could be packed solid, and I'm perfectly fine. But you put me in like a bar downtown Ottawa, and I'd be crawling out of my skin because it's such a foreign place. Comedy club is like my psychologist was my psychologist. my occupational therapist, the people at the insurance company that pay me money because I'm disabled because of my anxiety and depression from my day job. They're all like, well, you know, you have all these like social anxieties, how can you go on stage? And it's like, well, when I go on stage, nobody's in my fucking space, first of all.
Right.
Second of all, I feel like I can actually say what I want to say, and I feel like people are actually fucking listening to me. Whether or not they're laughing's a bonus, but
that's
but
true.
it's
I mean, the act of doing comedy on stage, I find is therapeutic. It's just all the anxiety that comes before and after, and the doubt and the regrets and the like, you know. For me, anyways, because they say that anxiety is living in the future and depression is living in the past. I mean, always oversimplifying it, but for me, it's like before I get on stage or trying to look forward to it. And then I'm on stage, I'm in the moment, and then afterwards I'm thinking back, shit, I should have said this, I fucked up this joke, whatever, and all that. So it's always like living either in the future or in the past, and never, the only time I'm in the moment is actually when I'm on the stage.
Yeah.
So it's just going back and forth between depression and anxiety, and it's been bad.
For me, people ask me, like, don't you get nervous before you go on stage? Like, aren't you worried? And I'm like, no, I don't. Which probably explains why, I don't have the consistency on stage that I should in terms of being a paid comic. But at the same time, it's just like, no, I don't know. It's this weird thing where I get up there where I know in advance, like, when I'm up there, I'm in charge.
Yeah. I mean, you seem pretty confident and comfortable on stage.
Which, am I the opposite in real life? Maybe. In certain aspects, I am. But at the end of the day, I don't know. It's like a switch goes on when I go up there. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'm on stage, switch goes on, I'm the comedian, I get off stage, switch goes off. And, for me, it's like the guy on stage and the guy off stage are two completely different people.
Yeah,
and
me too.
The guy off stage is not thinking about the guy on stage, and the guy on stage is sure as fuck not thinking about, because he's a selfish asshole who's a piece of shit. He's not thinking about the guy off stage when he gets off. He's just gonna. So I don't know.
That's true. I've said things on stage I would even never say in person to a regular person, and then I go up in the front of perfect strangers and I don't give a shit. Like, I don't think about the repercussions of saying things when I'm on stage for some reason to my real life.
I think,
completely different, two different people.
I think to a certain extent, when it comes to being on stage, you sort of get a certain amount of leeway in what you're saying. I mean, there are certain, and this is like the case when it comes to like any era of comedy. There are certain subjects that you probably shouldn't be joking about on stage.
Oh yeah,
and that's true of any generation of comedy. It doesn't matter, because people are always like, oh, well, Lenny Bruce and George Carlin, and yeah, I mean, they were mavericks. They were people that like bucked the trend and said controversial things, but there were certain subjects they did not cross over into, because I mean, that's the thing. Actually, this is kind of another subject I would like to bring up is the subject of dark jokes and being able to tell. Like, I would say that my entire comedy career, for lack of a better term, has always been dark jokes.
Yeah.
And I have never had a situation where somebody has told, except for the joke I told about Terry Fox being the shooter on the grassy knoll, the JFK assassination. That's the only joke where I've had somebody come up to me and say it was offensive.
Right.
And it was a boomer who was like, Terry Fox and JFK were important to my generation. Shut up, boomer.
I've had some offensive Terry Fox jokes. Yeah.
But I mean, by and large, my argument were people who are like, oh, cancel culture. Man, first of all, it doesn't exist, because anybody who's been quote-unquote canceled usually still has work afterwards. So, like, what's his name, who didn't get Saturday Night Live? Well, all of a sudden he got a bunch of gigs performing stand-up comedy all over America, because club owners usually like to book somebody who's controversial.
Yeah. That actually probably helped them.
Exactly.
Same thing for this Montreal guy that had the dreadlocks, and it was banned from. White guy with the dreadlocks and got banned from a club.
Nah.
And then he went on tour across Quebec just because of that.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with the case, but I mean that's usually the case. Anybody who's famous enough to generate any sort of press and comedy for doing something that's just considered inappropriate, they don't get canceled. They usually get more work. It may not be Saturday Night Live, but it's not like they're starving.
Yeah.
Like there are very few people who haven't bounced back from something like that. In fact, the only, not comedy related, the only person who I think in recent memory that hasn't bounced back from anything like that, and rightly so, is Gian Gameshi.
Fair, yeah, it's true.
But when you think about and Bill Cosby going to jail, which again
That didn't help.
deserved.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But
I've been listening to a lot of Bill Cosby albums actually on Spotify.
But you shouldn't hate the artist. Maybe not necessarily hate the art. Depending.
Well, I had never listened to any, and I got Spotify Premium, so I get all access to all the.
Yeah.
I've listened to at least like 8 of his 14 albums, and holy shit, was he good though?
Yeah. I mean, well, that's just it. I mean,
he was clean, squeaky clean, like his criminal record until a couple of years ago. But no, I mean, I never really. For me, he was like the Jello pudding guy and the Kids Stay in the Darkness thing.
Yeah, well,
Fat Albert.
The other thing, it was like another example would be, I guess, Michael Jackson. It's like, yeah, okay, condemn Michael Jackson for what he did as a person. Do we have to ban his music or whatever?
Fucking Billie Jean comes on at a wedding, I'm dancing on that bass line.
I don't think so. I think it's more appropriate to maybe put like what Disney does with their older movies, where they put like a content warning, so to speak, where they're like, this is a fucking old movie, doesn't reflect current, like what people currently think and do and whatever.
Maybe not the Hitler Youth, the Mickey Mouse episode, whatever.
Well, things like Dumbo, where it's like putting it, instead of banning it outright, putting it in historical context. But I'm sorry, I'm getting way off topic.
I don't know.
I was talking about dark comedy, and it's like you can still be a dark comedian, and you're not going to get canceled. So
But also, I mean, like that dark comedy probably comes from a dark place, and it's actually therapeutic for you to get it out somehow, and to say that you shouldn't do it is sort of like.
I think there are two schools of thought when it comes to people who are like, I do dark comedy. There's the people who like, oh, I'm just going to say offensive things for the sake of being offensive, which, no, you're just being a contrarian dick and you're not actually really funny. You're an insensitive asshole. Right. I think with a lot of dark comedy, the dark comedy that works is that it's coming from somewhere that's personal. So, like, I'll give you the best example, I guess, for like contemporary comedy. Doug Stanhope is a good example, where he says a lot of stuff that, in polite conversation would be considered offensive. But where Doug Stanhope's material works is that his material is coming from a place of personal experience. And that's the thing that all these assholes who believe in cancel culture don't seem to understand, is that you can still tell dark jokes, but those dark jokes need to be coming from somewhere personal. It has to be. If you're just being offensive for the sake of being offensive,
and I've done that, I've been that asshole for sure, but yeah,
it's so with my material, especially a lot of my newer stuff is coming from a more personal space. I'm telling a lot of jokes about mental health and committing suicide and incels and shit like that. All this dark stuff that people get uncomfortable when you talk about it. But I'm also coming at it from a place of personal experience, especially the mental health stuff, where not only am I struggling with issues like depression and suicide and whatever, but also the outward appearance where people are looking at me and thinking stuff like, well, is he going to be an incel? Is he going to be? I've had this cloud of like, maybe this guy is going to be an active shooter looming over from people who don't know me very well since high school, since Columbine. And one of my first jokes I've ever did was shortly after Columbine. I wasn't a comedian at the point, but after Columbine happened, remember how a couple of days later there was that one like mentally ill guy in Alberta that did a school shooting?
Did he actually, though?
Yeah. It was like a couple days after Columbine.
Oh.
And so here I am. I'm in high school. I'm the loner. I'm the loser. I sit in the lunchroom. I'm reading Star Trek novels. I just want to be left alone. I want to read about how Captain Kirk meets Captain Picard and just leave me the fuck alone. I don't want anything with your FUBU and your rap music and whatever. I just want to FUBU. There's a data reference. So anyways, so after the copycat shooting happened in Alberta a couple days after Columbine, look it up. I don't remember the exact specifics, but this one dickhead in my school that used to tease me, he comes up to me. He's like, "Hey man, if you're gonna go on a shooting spree, just remember I'm already dead." And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking? Like, I'm looking at him like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Right.
He pulls out his driver's license. He tosses it on the table. He's like, "See, look, I'm already dead." I'm looking at it, and I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about, man." He goes, "My name, it's the same as the kid that got killed yesterday in Alberta.
Wow.
So I'm already dead, so don't shoot me." And I'm like, so here's this dickhead, like this insensitive asshole who's like, "I'm gonna like tease this nerd about school shootings," which also, by the way, if you're teasing a nerd about going on a shooting rampage, that's poking the fucking bull. You know,
you're
like,
the first one getting shot.
Yeah.
I thought he was gonna be like nice to you, like, "Hey, I made you some cookies," just not befriend you.
He was being an asshole. So I put my bookmark in the book, closed it, put it on the table. I looked at him. I said, "Listen, you know what? I'm going to let you in on something. School shootings are so last month. This month, it's cannibalism. So if you see me running around the school in a Hawaiian shirt, because previous shootings, they were wearing leather trench coats, so I'm like, Hawaiian shirts.
Oh, yeah.
Hawaiian shirts with a fork and a knife. If you see me running around with a Hawaiian shirt and a fork and knife, running around...
Polynesian cultural appropriation, but anyways.
Get the fuck out of my way, because I'm going to be goddamn hungry." And he took a step back like I was fucking serious, and then he started laughing. "Oh, that's really funny." He walked away. But it was like, I mean, I've tried to tell a version of that on stage. It hasn't worked totally well, but, you know, because you have to take people back in time to the year 1999 when school shootings were a new thing. But no, that's kind of like when you're trying to craft a dark joke, you've got to do it in a way where you're coming from a personal place. You're giving people, this is my personal experience with this. This is how I'm reacting to it, and it also can't come from a place where you're like, "I don't have any experience with this. I'm just being an insensitive asshole." That's where people get quote unquote canceled, because you're just being you're being obtuse, really, which I think is the biggest crime ever, next to murder. But I digress. Oh
man, there's so much more to talk about, but the battery's getting low. But yeah, maybe we'll do shit. And it's starting to rain right now, so with the laptop out and everything, it's probably not a good idea.
I would advise against it.
Yeah.
I did. I almost did that in my Optimus Prime voice.
Yeah, we didn't get to talk about that. I also checked your IMDb page.
Oh yeah, I am on IMDb.
And then I looked at the author, and it was like, "Oh, Nick Peron wrote this biography." I mean, shouldn't you just use like a pen name or a pseudonym so that it looks like somebody else writing?
I want people to know that it was me writing some bullshit about myself.
By myself, yeah. Can anybody just write their own biography?
Oh yeah, absolutely,
IMDb?
100%.
Shit. All right.
Yeah.
I'll get on that then.
So yeah. So I guess if anyone who hasn't been completely put off by everything I've said right now, you can check out the shit I'm doing by going to nickperon.com. That's NICKPERON.com. I'm also on YouTube. You can find... I've got 3 YouTube channels for some reason. One of them is just my comedy. The other one is I was trying to do these videos where I recut old Transformers episodes. Where
Brilliant.
I talk like
too.
Optimus Prime. Which, if you ever want to sound like Optimus Prime, children, start smoking. That's my advice.
Yeah.
but you might end up sounding like Megatron, who sounds like he smoked 40 packs a day. That's not a very good Megatron.
Or one of your intergalactic jokes.
Yes. And then I used to also do a horror blog back in the day. There might be a couple of those videos still around, but I have an internet presence. Just Google my name. I'm not the jazz musician with the same name. Fuck that guy. Because
Spelled the same?
Yeah, it's spelled
Peron?
the same. With one R. He's a jazz musician. I guess I'm just jealous because I'm assuming he plays brass instruments and I can't.
There you go.
I can't blow, is basically what I'm saying. And we'll end on that note, I guess.
Thanks, everyone, for watching. See you next time.
Bye now.
Cheers.
Oh, that was fun.
Yeah, man.